Well, thank you and good evening. Welcome to Schuler Performing Arts Center here on the campus of North Idaho College. I'm Mark Browning. I am the chair of the Public Policy Committee for the Coeur d'Alene Chamber. I also work here at North Idaho College. It's our pleasure to have you here on campus tonight. We appreciate you being here and sacrificing a truly beautiful North Idaho evening. So hopefully you'll be rewarded with an evening of good conversation, some insight into the folks that are putting themselves out there in the world of public service. And for all of them, we truly appreciate their dedication for doing that. So we're embarking on something a little unusual tonight, and we appreciate the faith and the good sportsmanship and spirit of those who are agreeing to participate tonight. This is a little unusual format, and what we're hoping to get tonight is a good, in-depth, contextual conversation about issues that are of importance to us here in Kootenai County and also to those who would represent us in our legislature in Boise in the coming term. So we've been a little lighthearted in saying that we've banned podiums and red ties and lapel pins, but really our intent here is to have folks offer a little more in-depth and insightful background into why they have the positions they have and how they feel that benefits those of us who live here in this area. So thank you to those who have agreed to participate. It's a 30-minute segment per district. Each of our candidates, these are contested races only. I know we've had some discussion with some folks that, why aren't some of the others who are uncontested being here tonight, and we're very hopeful to have them in the fall when they will be contested. So right now, we're dedicating the time that we have to those races that are being contested. We'll start with this Legislative District 2. We'll go 30 minutes. Then we'll call up District 3 and then District 4. You've seen some folks here listed on the PowerPoints tonight that are our sponsors, and we would certainly like to thank all of those who have helped make this possible. The North Idaho Building Contractors Association, Larry, your group, thank you so much. The Coeur d'Alene Realtors Association, thank you to you folks that are here tonight. We appreciate your support as well. And I'd really like to thank the folks over at Kerner Furniture. They brought this over free of charge, set up a living room for us. Yes, thank you. It's bigger than my entire house, but I really like it. It's pretty comfortable too. I tried it out this afternoon. So if you see the folks from Kerner, please tell them thank you so much. They have just been terrific to work with, one of our local businesses that supports both chambers of commerce. Pam Hauser is here with the Post Falls Chamber of Commerce. Pam, thank you for your organization's support. We appreciate that as well. And Steve Wilson. The lovely and talented Steve Wilson was in the audience. There he is. Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Steve, for your organization's support as well. I'd also like to thank the folks here that Justin Van Eaton and his crew that are helping us with their crew tonight. That they are just so professional and do a great job. Patty and Justin, Andy, everyone that's here, thank you for your time here this evening. So let's get busy. Let's have some discussion. Let's talk about some issues. I'd like the folks from District 2, you'll be first up, so go ahead and make your way on up here. While they're getting set, I want to just, we talked a little bit about the format. While these folks are coming up, you'll notice just a couple of things. We want you to silence your cell phone, but don't turn it off. We want you to use it. For those of you that like to engage in social media, we're asking that you use the hashtag IDPOL, Idaho Politics. That way other folks who follow political developments across the state can search that, and they can be involved with what's happening tonight. So if you like to tweet, if you like to Facebook, if you Instagram, we welcome all of that. Just turn off the ringer so that when somebody starts commenting on your post, it doesn't distract the folks up here. All right. For those of you that need wireless, there's free wireless here in this building. It's the NIC Public Wireless. It's free. You just click to join and away you go. So there we go. We got our first one. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to introduce our folks here this evening, and then we're going to get started. I want to start with Vito Barbieri, District 2. He is the incumbent. He just completed his second term. Vito is a retired attorney. He lives in Dalton Gardens. Fritz Wiedenhoff is a North Idaho native. He's an officer in the Northern Lakes Fire Protection District, and he's also an NIC graduate. Fritz, thank you for being here. Ed Morris just completed his first term in the Idaho House. Seat B, he is a real estate appraiser, 40 years, he lives in Hayden. And Eric Redmond, a businessman from the Rathdrum area, works in the insurance industry. So our two folks leading the discussion tonight for District 2 will be the lovely Pam Hauser, CEO of the Post Falls Chamber of Commerce, and a guy with gray hair from North Idaho College. So, folks, thank you. We're going to get started. We have 30 minutes on the clock, so let me just set this down and we'll get busy. We joked a little bit backstage that if this truly was a living room, somebody would have a remote, and there'd probably be a glass of wine. So
yeah, a glass of wine.
We're working on that for the fall. So, the topic that I wanted to start with was on local option taxing authority and how that can be used from a local perspective, whether it be to do improvement districts, whether it be to help generate business or to improve neighborhoods. And I'd love to throw that topic out there and get some thoughts and comments about that. It's been something that's kind of stalled in the legislature in years past, and I'm wondering what the thoughts of the group are. So, anyone want to jump out and get started?
Anytime you start talking about more taxes, I don't know, I start to get a little nervous about it. I mean, they have their times, but we're trying to reduce taxes, you know, not increasing. Oh. There, how's that?
It's a little better.
Anytime you start talking about more taxes, you know, I get a little queasy about that because we're trying to reduce taxes, and I realize sometimes you can have a specialized area that it would be beneficial, but again, it's something I would certainly look at, but I'm not real excited about it.
Well, local option taxation is just that, local option. And so the people have to agree to it. We have had option taxes for resort cities. There's been discussion. It has not been popular in the legislature. Whenever you have an LID formed or whenever you have an urban renewal district formed, you have the consent of the voters in order to do that. I think that there are certain instances where that may be appropriate. One of those instances happens to be, I think, resort cities where you have a lot of infrastructure. Because you have a large influx of people in and out of the community, essentially you have to overbuild your infrastructure in terms of water systems, sewer systems, and road systems. If the community wants to accommodate those kinds of things and agree to those as part of their economic development scheme, I think that should be something that the state legislature should entertain. Now, the state legislature has taken a very conservative approach about approving those in the past. Frankly, I think that we need to revisit it periodically to be able to let communities make those decisions. I think some of those kinds of decisions are best left to the community.
So why the hesitation, though, from the legislative body that has a conservative mindset? I think we can agree on that. The state legislature has collectively a fairly conservative mindset. So why not put that back, and why stand in the way? And in some cases, we just even haven't had a hearing on it for several years.
Well, you're right, and there hasn't been a hearing there, I believe, in the short time that I've been there. But there is a collective anti-tax philosophy down there, and we are a very conservative state.
I think Representative Morse brings some excellent points up, and I think he highlighted one, but I don't think he went into detail. Like a lot of other things, and I think most everyone, I'm sure, up here on this stage, the candidate-wise, agrees, the word local comes out. Local control, local option. We hear rhetoric constantly, continually that, you know, get the federal government out particularly. And anytime there's a mechanism, even a potential mechanism, to put that control back locally and let the citizens and constituents and voters decide, possibly even a mechanism like with a supermajority, like a mill rate increase, something like that, I think that is an economic tool for the toolbox that can't be ignored. We can all agree also that economic development, which brings jobs, which furthers educational priorities, things we have to have that. And if that's one of the tools we need, then I think it really does need to be visited in an appropriate manner and get a hearing.
See, one of those issues on local option taxes has been and generally they are sales taxes. So you may have many retailers in your community that are in the hospitality business that would favor it, and you may have other types of retailers that would feel that it affects them in a disparate manner. For example, maybe a car dealer, where a 1% sales tax on their type of business would drive that transaction into another community. So you've got to look at the nature of the tax and the impact that it may have on businesses. And I think there's just been a reluctance to engage and to essentially delegate some of those kinds of powers locally by the legislature.
Does that get you into a bigger discussion, though, about taxation in general and what is a more secure way to fund public services, sales tax versus a property tax or an income tax? Because sales tax is the most susceptible to economic swings, right? I mean, so why not broaden that discussion out?
Sales tax is susceptible to economic swings. As we saw in the last recession, property taxes are also susceptible, and income taxes are also susceptible. So we have a balanced revenue and tax system better than many states in terms of three-legged stool. We use all three of those. It is, I think, important that we do balance the tax system. It's one thing that business and industry usually looks at to make sure that no particular segment of the economy is being taxed at the expense of others. It's an equitable distribution to the extent that we can arrive at that.
I think Representative Morse brings excellent points forward. I did want to touch on one thing. I expand on it, I think. In regards to the driving the business, I think that really could be key, and that needs to be considered, particularly a big ticket item. Could someone go to the Silver Valley or up to Bonner? Well, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Representative Morse, I'm hoping can verify this for me. The sales tax, if you go over to Kellogg to buy a car, you come back, you're going to pay the Kootenai County rate, correct? So it doesn't matter if you bought one at a dealer in Kootenai County or a dealer in Washington or anywhere else, I think, in the country. So something like that may not be susceptible, but quite frankly, it could be with other big ticket items like refrigerators, or if someone can drive up to Sandpoint and get some. So that really does need to be a consideration. That's why I was wondering where my idea, or an idea, was possibly a supermajority. If see how much you could get, maybe if not 50% plus one, maybe there's a sliding scale that could be implemented and written into that legislation to ensure that the voters, the constituents, and ultimately the taxpayers are comfortable with doing that, with helping with the economic development.
Instead of talking about more taxes, I'd rather repeal the grocery tax, get rid of the corporate tax. I'm just not real favorable to taxes. So
I think the point is that as soon as you start talking about the issue of taxes, it is a larger issue in terms of how it affects other taxes and how it affects businesses. The two issues that concern me are the definition of local, the idea that local, well, if you want to talk about local is the individual. But if you're talking about cities and counties, they're creatures of the state. And we've found that when we allow a community to establish a urban development unit, that they tend to act and react without the taxpayer's consent, without their ability to at least weigh in. So the issue of local, and then of course the wider question of, this is a serious issue in terms of being able to say, now we've started this taxation, now how are we going to fine tune it? Let's exempt cars, let's exempt refrigerators. Well, what about stoves? They're only about, so we start fine tuning it, we get into the minutia. We find that businesses and communities are much better off with less taxes. And that's the Republican, that's the conservative perspective. And the idea of continuing to address, well, what about this new source of funds or that new source of funds? Idaho State budgeted, authorized for next 6.7, in the range of $6.7 billion. We're spending a lot of money in this state. The question is, where's it going and how's it being allocated? And those issues fall right into line with whether you're going to have a local option tax, where the money's going to go, what's going to be done with that. And you talk about neighborhoods being improved, I'm not sure I see that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit about how you would expect neighborhoods to be improved with a local option tax?
Well, that's one of the things that has been floated out there, is that idea that essentially a neighborhood could form a taxing district to improve themselves. Now, whether that's an HOA or if it's some other of an entity, but it would require a 2/3 plus one. So I guess the question that I'm coming back, and I understand where you're going, but I'm trying to figure out, all right, we've got 6.7, 6.8 as total, which includes federal funds. The state budget is upper twos, threes, somewhere in there.
A little below 3.
Without taxation, how do we fund the necessary services that the public expects? Roads, bridges, how do cities fund fire and police? How do we do that? Because there is an expectation that a certain amount of it is provided.
Well, when you say without taxation, you're basically putting me in a position where I'm saying no taxes, and that's not, of course, what I'm saying.
Right. Okay.
Obviously, taxes are necessary for a functioning government. Yeah. No one's saying that. And the question is local option tax and whether or not the state legislature should authorize local communities to do that. And I am soundly against that, because I don't believe that in the legislature, local government, for instance, we've got ex-mayors, ex-city councilmen, and they will not allow a vote to be put any chance, any time that it comes up, they will not allow that vote, because they say, we've been elected to do the hard work. And that's a reasonable perspective. But to disallow that vote when it comes to taxation is to actually tell them, you don't need to be here. We are the elite. We know better than you. And that's what I have the objection about.
Interesting perspective.
Mark, weren't you talking about local option tax where people would get a chance to vote? I just wanted to make sure that's what we're talking about.
That's the topic that I wonder about.
Yeah, and I also wanted to highlight, I don't think that the question you floated out there wasn't, should we create a new tax just willy-nilly? I believe it was, if local communities wanted to do it and they needed improvements, how else, other than the legislature? We're sure about that 6.7 figure, because I know you had trouble with the math last session.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay. Is local control and local voters getting the opportunity to weigh in? And that's why I even think I heard you say it too, the supermajority, the 66 2/3, which if you're going to get 66 2/3 of anybody to agree on anything, that's a pretty good deal.
That was going to be my next follow-up, is that threshold too high? There's been some talk in years past.
Do I need to pull this closer?
Okay. My wife will tell you, you have to tell me things 2 or 3 times. So, there's been talk in the last couple of years that maybe 66 2/3 is too high. That's an unrealistic bar. Is that too high for you on any kind of a taxation to clear? If you get 67% of the people say, yeah, we want to tax ourselves?
Mark, let's look at a different way. Let's get our 62% of our federal lands back and start building income on that, which will create more jobs and also will give us more income for the state. I think that's a focus we need to do in the state legislature.
Now you're jumping ahead on the list. Well, but let's go there. And I know Pam's got a question too, but I talked to somebody who works in the forestry arena just within the last week, and we were in Bonners. The governor was in Bonners for Capital for a day, and there was that topic. Said, let's get federal lands back on the roll so we can use them. The person said to me, that sounds great, except we don't have the capacity to handle all that right now. The industry can't absorb that impact of having all that extra inventory, essentially. So how would we go about that?
I'd like to have an opportunity to see if we could absorb it. I think that's an area we need to go. And Attorney General Troupas, he'd be willing to go after that program.
Well, there's a huge divergence of legal opinions. Our existing Attorney General has a different perspective on the likelihood of a lawsuit. The Sagebrush Rebellion in the 1970s entailed some of that litigation, and it was unsuccessful. Utah has come forward with a slightly different legal theory in our Admissions Act. Here in Idaho is significantly different from Utah's Admissions Act. So this issue has been around for, I don't know, 150 years. It's not something that's going to get reconciled quickly. It's not something that is going to be a big economic boost. It may be a goal. I think one of the best goals that we could establish would be to try to better manage federal lands. Title to those lands is in the federal government. Under our Admissions Act, the 95% of the proceeds upon sale would go to the federal government. It may be a bit naive to think that the federal government is going to deed them to the state. At the same time, if we could get state management, the critical thing is to get better management of the timber. 40 years ago, we had 13 lumber mills in our county. We've got 2. There's a huge impact to our employment base and the general economic well-being because of the high percentage of federal lands that don't pay property tax, and those lands are not productively used. The timber is not well managed and it's not harvested.
Yeah, you know, we're probably second or third in the most land that the federal government controls in the United States. You know, Hawaii just got their land back, so we are in trust. That land is in trust. So I guess I don't totally agree with that. I think if we change the Attorney General, I think you're right. The existing Attorney General isn't doing anything about it, but I think we can get something done with it.
I don't know that even if that would be, I think, not near as effective method. We're so down to, I guess, on this question, we're really down to there's 2 points of view. We want to take it back over and go through a lengthy, expensive court battle that's no doubt going to go generations before it's settled, or we work a deal that we could manage it. And I contend that Idaho can manage anything better than the federal government can.
I will agree with that.
And I think that's really an avenue to pursue. I think it's not a viable option to want to try to take something that we never technically owned. When I have, after when this issue I saw was an issue, I did read the Admissions Act, and it seems pretty cut and dry and clear, and I see where our Attorney General is Lawrence Wasden, and I see where he does come up with that opinion. And I don't know that that's such a fantastic opportunity to try to go back to court and have court battle after court battle after court battle after court battle. Look what the Supreme Court did with this with the Affordable Care Act. What's to say that they wouldn't do the same thing with this, with the federal lands issue? So a partnership where we can manage it, we can bring some jobs back, we can foster some economic growth, and we can start doing some supportive things. And then if we did that, maybe we wouldn't even have to have the local option tax discussion, and we'd be funding our education properly, and our students wouldn't be 48 or 49, they'd be number 1 or number 2.
There's no question but that those states that have control of the land that the federal government had at one time are not having funding problems for their education. And that is, I think, a viable goal. I like the idea that there's varied opinions by attorneys. When haven't there been? Any issue.
Isn't that what they teach you guys in law school, is make sure you have 3 or 4 of those?
The bar exam is all about, on the other hand.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much what we're trained to do. But this issue, this federal lands issue, the idea that we can somehow manage federal land with their regulations coming from every possible agency jurisdiction that the federal government can muster, if you talk about something that's unworkable, that would be unworkable. We have got to have control so that we can control the regulations. As it is, the Forestry Service thinks that they own the roads in those forests, and they don't. The law is very clear. County controls those roads, but they're able to shut them off. And we have no power to do that. We have no power to stop them because the legislature doesn't have the gumption to act, and because the bureaucracies don't have the agencies don't have the gumption to stand up against the federal government. Because the general thought is that if the federal government acts, the state must stand down in any field. And I just disagree with that.
In a meeting, watching the Forest Service, it was an objection seminar. They were a big meeting at the resort, and they essentially said they are sovereign, that the county governments don't have any control in that property, the Panhandle National Forest around them. And believe me, there was a lot of objections from commissioners, even from a senator from Montana that's also affected. So we do have a problem. We have dual sovereignty, you know, but the states have some of it. And when the local counties, they should have some control over the properties around them and the economic effects of those counties when that land is there.
I'd really love to go down this road a little more, but I want to let Pam jump in here, so maybe we can get another half hour here. We'll tag it on the end or something.
I just want to change direction a little bit. I want to talk a little bit, because I'm here representing business. And so we have a great community where we have active chambers, active mayors, Jobs Plus, working to recruit new business here, and working hard to keep business here. So let's talk a little bit about business incentives and that are currently enacted, and do they work, and maybe give an example of how we can improve upon that.
I'm guessing one of the ones would be something similar like what Utah and Washington do, to give us a rebate for a new business to relocate to Idaho and bring some jobs. And is that kind of what direction we're going? I think anytime that we can inspire and encourage business to come and participate in the economic growth of Idaho, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. You know, we've heard a lot of things, and I understand there's two sides to the argument, with the 70% of nothing is better than 0% of that statement. There is some truth to that, I believe. I think as long as businesses are treated fairly and equally, they will drive the economic development. If we can broaden the tax base, taxes are going to end up going down for everybody. We'll be able to properly fund education and infrastructure and everything else we need to. But we have to be the place that business wants to come. We have to be the place that business says, I want to locate to Idaho because they treat their businesses fairly. They've got reduced the regulation through state policy. They don't create more, because the government does not create jobs. The government either encourages businesses to grow or prohibits it through excessive regulation. And I think that's the direction that we really need to take, is how can we encourage businesses to either expand in the state, grow in the state, or relocate to the state and broaden our tax base. I think that's going to be where we need to go with that. I remember Representative Morse bringing up something about that. I think he even sponsored the bill with some of that, or was a co-sponsor on that. And I think that was fantastic legislation.
There was a piece of legislation that was brought forward by the Department of Commerce, Director Sayer. I was a co-sponsor, and it provided for new employees that met a benchmark salary and a certain period of time of employment, a refund up to 30% of the taxes that a business paid. That was a piece of legislation that was modeled after Utah, because they have been very successful in out-recruiting Idaho and bringing in new employment. Business expansion and employment is a highly competitive field for businesses, and they're looking after the best interest of the business, and if they can make a better deal somewhere in terms of taxes or regulation in another state, they'll do it. So for Idaho to compete, we needed to bring forward legislation like that, and I believe that that will be a good tool. It is only one tool. Business looks at a variety of different factors when they go to relocate, and it's everything from your business climate, your regulatory structure, your tax structure, but probably one of the most important things that we've got to continue to work on and build on is the skill set and the workers, and whether or not we've got trained workers. And that really pulls into the decision-making process for bettering ourselves and raising our standard of living. How do we design and reach an appropriate balance between skilled workers in our educational system, where we're turning out better workers with the skill set and the knowledge for business, and at the same time we've got an attractive regulatory and taxation environment within our state. And we're being out-recruited by some states that even have higher tax structures because of their educational systems and their skilled workforce. And so it is something that I think that as legislators we need to continue to look at. There's been some academic research on that. I've discussed it with leadership in the House, and I think that it will continue to be an area that's focused on in the near future.
I'd like to comment about two of those points. One thing with when new business is coming in, we got to remember there's businesses that are already here, and all of a sudden you say, okay, this business is coming in with 20 employees. What about the business already that had 20 employees? We want to make sure that, you know, they get some of the benefits too. I know we want to bring in more businesses, but we want to keep the businesses we have here going. And if it's a tax credit, you know, we need to share the wealth per se. And as far as education, I believe in a dual track education. I don't think all our young people have to go to college, okay? I think we need more professional, technical schools. The National Manufacturers Association says by 2018, they're going to need 2.6 million, you know, workers just for that industry. So we need to teach more careers where you're talking about 1-2 years, you know, not 4 or 5 years in college and the expense that goes with it. So I think that's a real important area that we need to focus on.
But that's still college, though. If you're after high school, you're post-secondary, right? So if it's career and technical training after high school, it's still technical
Well, it could
college,
be community
right?
college, it could be a tech school.
We'd love it to be community college.
I mean, we got K-Tech, you know, you got STEM, you know, the science and tech.
Absolutely.
So, you know, there's a lot of, we need choice. When parents have a choice, the kids have a chance.
We've got about a minute and a half left. So 30 minutes goes very fast. So for districts 3 and 4, you'll get the sense here. On the education front, and I know that you cannot cover this in a minute and a half, but what can we do differently, both from the education side and from the governance side?
Well, I think the first thing we do is we identify that education is a priority, and it is a priority. Our governor has done a good job of replenishing the rainy day fund, so we don't have to worry about a sustainability for educational funding if we do hit another recession. Now maybe it's time to divert some funds back and start doing that. We have Idaho core standards which provide all that we want is we want to say the students will graduate with this quality. And how they get there is up to the local school districts. That provides our local control back. That's what everyone can agree on. We need local control on how to get there. And we have to start somewhere. I think we are starting to prioritize education. I think Representative Morse actually hit it on the head, I think, when he said one of the biggest tools, and we've been outbid by other states because of their skilled workforce. And that skilled workforce has to have education that starts at K, actually probably pre-K. And until we earnestly and completely embrace the fact that education has got to be the #1 priority to get back to the jobs and to grow the economy, then we're going to spin our wheels.
All right, I just want to weigh in on this because the whole perspective that we're talking about here is to make sure that students come out able to work. We're not teaching them anymore, we're training them. We're going to make sure that they're able to get out there and not just find a job, but be able to walk in and do the job. And I'm not sure that that's what education's purpose is. If we were to revert back to the classical education, I mean, we put a man on the moon without Common Core. We were using regular old basic math. We were able to use a classical education, and we were able to accomplish the unthinkable. And the idea now with Common Core and the whole idea of somehow educating these kids so that they can walk into an industry and don't have to worry about training, to me, is upside down. I believe that they should be not taught to be critical thinkers, but independent thinkers. They've got to be able to think above the fray and look at things with perspective and circumspection. And we're not teaching them that. What we're teaching them now is, here's what you need to accomplish, and no exceptions. Follow these rules, get to the end. Get to the end, and then you're going to have your job waiting for you. And if your job is waiting for you, how close to socialism are we?
Yeah, and our teachers are teaching to the test rather than teaching the children. You know, our children are individuals. They have different gifts. We're from a rural community. They need to be taught in the local community, and the test and the standards need to be from that local community.
So if we were at home in our living room, somebody would open another bottle of wine and we'd keep going.
Either that or open the door and say, out.
But we've already gone over our 30 minutes. Folks, thank you so much.